Best-selling author, speaker and coach Byron Katie has been on a mission for over 30 years to teach people how to end their own suffering. As she guides people through the powerful yet simple process of self-inquiry, Katie has supported millions to radically shift their mindsets and their lives. Born out of Katie's own struggle with depression and suffering, the work is a 4-step process that can be used by anyone, no matter what your age. A light-hearted truth seeker, Katie's work will inspire you to shift your ego's gaze from looking outside of yourself, the source of your pain and frustration, and to settle into the knowing that you are the creator of your reality, with ultimate responsibility for how you feel. With the warmth and kindness of a true friend, Katie's work acts as a mirror for us to see who we truly are and how we show up in our relationships. Her work is simple yet requires courage. But my friend, if you will take this journey, you will find a new understanding of who you truly are and a deeper love and connection with yourself and those close to your heart. I wanted to start off, Katie, by talking about emotional triggers in parenting. Mm-hmm. The parent-child relationship can leave us sort of on a swing. We can move in seconds from feeling like our hearts are ready to burst with love.
Yeah.
Feeling like we can pull our hair out because we've had to say get in the bath 100 times.
Yes.
So I wanted to start by asking, can you help us understand what lies beneath those emotional triggers and why our kids are so good at pushing our buttons?
Well, the short version of that for me, because I have two of my granddaughters here for part of the summer, and they're 11 and 12. And so the key for me in answer to that is if I see them the way they are, it doesn't matter. We get along so beautifully and we're so connected. But if I see that old them, that them of the past, it influences the way I see them now. So it's as though I believe that's them now, but it's not. It's a whole different mindset of these beautiful little girls in the moment. So the problem lies with me, not my child. The way I'm perceiving my child that is the child I'm going to react to. That's the one I'm reacting out of. The problem is it's not the child standing in front of me. I hope that's not too abstract for people to hear.
No.
But when we put the past on that child, that's on us. Now, I'm not saying it's wrong. This is about noticing what is so important for us to notice so we can stop blaming the child and look to ourselves. And that's where all change begins. That's where it all happens, because I'm watching in my granddaughters behaviors shift in them that are old. And because I know the difference between this girl and the one I project, because I know the difference, their behavior is changing so radically in my home that it's so beautiful. They're doing things that they didn't even know they could do, like make up their beds in the morning without being told, or just to make up their beds in the morning. And to brush their teeth on time and all these, they're amazing themselves. And really, it's one in particular, because I have her more often than the other to be there with every day, every morning. So much fun, this grandparenting. It's not the way I parented, I can tell you that for sure.
It is different. Even with my mom is so much more relaxed with my kids than she ever was with me. That sometimes I say, where have you come from?
Yeah, you're not the parent I recognized.
No.
But I can honestly say my children said that about me. And then when the work found me, the inquiry, when that found me, then, they see me as parenting them the same way I'm grandparenting the children. So we've got a match. So what was old was a match. What is new is a match.
That's good. You said in quite a few of your books, don't believe everything you think.
Yes.
And I have to say, Katie, before I read that, it never occurred to me that I could question my thoughts.
Yes.
I just took for granted that somehow my thoughts equaled reality.
Yes.
And if you had to fit within
Isn't that a mind blower? It
is mind blowing.
It's like, what? You mean everything I think isn't true? You know, it's like we know when we're lying and we feel guilty, but then those times when we're saying things and we're so sure, it's like, oh my gosh, once we begin to think, am I sure? And it's like self-awareness, isn't it? No one has to call on us, and there's no guilt in it. It's just like waking up to reality.
For all the parents that are following us that will be new to the work and all of the beautiful, amazing work that you've been doing, can you help us understand why we should question our thoughts in the food and describe for us the process that you've designed?
Well, the reason I question my thoughts is because I experienced so much suffering around my parenting. In fact, that's one reason that I'm sitting with you. I was such an unfair parent to my mind, and to their mind, such an unfair parent that I owe my children, I owe my grandchildren, and I owe the world that it affected. And so I'm very clear about my job, and that is to stay clear. And if I suffer, all I have to do is look at what I was thinking and believing in that situation and question it, and I'm free. It's like we get to start our lives with that child all over again. And children are very quick to forgive. It's us that can be so slow sometimes. And so the way I question my mind, so answer your first part of that question is suffering. That's why I question my mind. Any separation with my child, we all just feel that. We feel like, oh my gosh, how can I get through to this child? Well, first I have to get through to myself. Okay, so suffering. And then in answer to the second part of that, the work is very simple. It's always free at thework.com, and instructions how to do it, and YouTube. But it's just 4 questions, and then we turn whatever thought we're working, we find opposites, we turn it around. So, for example, my child will never make up her bed. Okay? Or you give me one. You give me one that's common with your viewers.
One that's common first. So we've got actually a couple questions from our viewers. So I'll read one out for you. It's from Annie. And Annie's got 2 kids, 6 and 9. And he says, my kids don't listen to me. The only way I can get them to do what I say is to yell and scream. Can you help me?
I know that one so well. So
do I.
You know, but where my mind goes with them is that even when we yell and scream, they don't always do it. So what do we have to lose by just talking? For example, on one of my granddaughters was on the phone with her mother this morning, and she gave her the simplest instruction, and my granddaughter said, okay. And then the mother repeated it again, and the granddaughter said, okay. And then the mother got louder, and the child said, Mom, I hear you. And then she says, and then she got louder, and all the time this little girl, and that's me as a parent, that's my old self, you know, it's like me, my stepdaughter was repeating and saying over and over what the child already understood. Now, it doesn't mean just because she understood it that she's going to do that task. But if we yell at them, we still don't know if they're going to do that task.
Yeah.
So it is just to listen to my children, and I think they're not listening to me. When I think they're not listening to me, am I listening to them? And my granddaughter so clearly said, okay, Mom. But it could be that my daughter-in-law projected, yeah, well, I better tell her again because she forgets, her mind gets occupied all of, yeah, but the truth is, this little girl did say, okay. And again, she said, okay, Mom. And again, she said, okay, Mom, you don't have to tell me again. Mom, I heard, and then the mom's getting louder. So I think that's such a good example. And that was just an hour or so ago. But when we're on the other side of it, we can see it so clearly. So now I don't have to think my granddaughter is rude. She's disrespectful to her parent, and her parent's only trying to help her. And even though on one hand we could say those things were true, because I can see now out of this questioned mind, no one's guilty. There are two people that love each other, doing their best to communicate one to the other.
How can we tell when we're observing guidance too?
Would you repeat that?
And
Would you repeat that?
How can we tell? How can we tell when we're observing behavior that we probably need to help our kids address, and when we're observing behavior that's really just triggering and mirroring for us what we need to address?
Yeah.
How can we tell the difference between those?
Well, inquiry definitely shows us the difference. It really shows us the difference. And another example of that is one of my granddaughters, the first day she stayed, I said, sweetheart, don't forget to make up your bed. Well, she didn't. She didn't make it up. And I thought, well, you know, at that age, I probably wouldn't have either. And I made it up happily for me. I didn't make it up for her because I like the room. Anyway, so these last 3 days, that was a couple of weeks ago, these last 3 days, I get up, I wake her up, I go back into room, her bed's made, everything's folded and put up, her teeth are brushed, she's showered. Not only that, I put out all of her breakfast things. I go back in to clean them up. The kitchen is spotless. And this is, I know. I'm
sending my kids to you.
You know, I didn't expect any of it. But she heard me say, don't forget to make up your bed. And then when she did, like this morning, for example, I said, sweetheart, your room looks beautiful. And I was amazed. I went in to clean up the kitchen and you had everything put up. And I said, I can't tell you how I appreciate it and how much it helps me. And which is partly true because I love cleaning up after her. You know, I love it, can't help it. And that's new. That's new. I used to think, oh my gosh, they're so messy. I have to clean up after them. When are they ever going to learn? Parenting was a burden for me. And I am so blessed that the way I raised my children, you know, yelling when I wanted them to get something done, for example, but for them to even allow me to keep their children, I mean, that is huge. Oh my gosh, parenting. But first I parented myself. And the way I parented myself was I questioned my thoughts and I lived those turnarounds because it's what I wanted them to live. And I saw that I was a hypocrite. And until I could live what I wanted my children to live, I had no right to criticize them. And it was work. I don't call it this process the work for nothing. These 4 questions and turnarounds. But
it requires a lot of courage because if we go back to Annie's question, this was one that I had a couple of years ago, and I did my Judge Your Neighbor worksheet on it. My kids don't listen to me, and in the space of trying to move from an old parenting paradigm to one that's more connected, I found myself doing a bit of a dance. And there are times when I'm easily and happily the very calm, connected mom. And there are times when I feel overwhelmed and overtired and I slip back into those old habits and I yell. And And in those moments, it's really difficult to remember it isn't about them. It's about me.
Yes.
The reason I feel like they're not listening is because I'm not listening.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And that was very powerful.
Yes. 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 You put it so simply. That's exactly what I found. That's exactly what I found. So it becomes our practice of listening, and then our children follow. They follow. They just do. As we become aware, they become aware. It just works that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got one that you feel you need to give guidance, especially around things like education. So I'll give you an example from my own home. My son hates homework. He will do everything in the book, every trick he can think of to get out of doing his homework or to do the bare minimum.
Yes.
And as a mom, I think if you don't do your homework, you will fall behind. And I come with all my fear and all my worry to him when it's homework time.
Yes.
How can I use the work so that I can stay grounded and stay connected and give guidance where it's actually needed?
Okay, so in the moment, we can't be connected, because when we're not connected, we're just out there and we find ourselves doing, living out those tendencies that we don't like in ourselves, expressing out of those. And so for me, it would be to later, like after he has his little lunch and he's off to school and I have a moment, I would get a judge or neighbor worksheet and I would close my eyes and be in that situation where I lost my temper with him or where I was frustrated. And I would close my eyes and I would imagine us just the way we were. And then I would begin to identify the thoughts I was thinking in that situation with my child. And the judge and neighbor worksheet it's made for that. So I would just fill it in with those thoughts I was thinking then. And it's so beautiful, Nicole, because the thoughts I was thinking then are the cause of my anger. That was the cause of my anger in that situation. It wasn't my child. It's what I was thinking and believing. So now that I have all those thoughts identified that made me so angry, then I questioned them. The first question is it true? The second question, can I absolutely know that what I'm believing is true? Like he should listen to me. And how do I react when I believe the thought he should listen to me? And then I close my eyes and I witness how I react when I believe that thought, the things I say to him, the fear I experience, the emotions I feel, the feelings, the guilt. And then how do I react when I believe the thought? I see how I raised my voice. I put my hands on my hip. I gave him the look. I threw up my hands. I can see it so clearly how I react when I believe the thought he doesn't listen to me in that situation. And then I witnessing the same thing, seeing my child there in that same situation, that fourth and last question, who would I be without the thought he doesn't listen to me? And that's exactly what I got to see with my granddaughter this morning, dealing with her mother's projections onto her. It's so beautiful. We get to see our child and immediately we're connected. He doesn't listen to me, then we turn it around to opposite. I don't listen to me. I was treating him in a manner that was hurtful. I felt guilty. I don't listen to me. I wasn't listening to the things I was saying. I just kept on talking to him in that manner. And then I experienced that. And sometimes a lot of tears come with it because really we're meditating on a moment in time. That's what these questions and turnarounds are. So then another turnaround, another opposite. He doesn't listen to me. Okay, what's an opposite? Another opposite. He does listen to me. And then we just get quiet and we look at that situation and we can it will show us always in my experience, something different. He heard me. He's not deaf. He's not mute. He was responding to everything I said. He heard me. I wasn't listening. He said, Mom, I hear you. It's like, no, you don't. I mean, we get to see how crazy we are, and we get to see the cause of our suffering and disconnect with our children, how that's done specifically. So he doesn't listen to me. He does listen to me. And then I look at that situation, and it shows me examples of that being at least as true or truer. And for me, it's always truer. I can always see where that child listens. Even children that are deaf hear us. They hear us in their way. So even our children that are not, that are trying to drown us out, they hear us. Because we can watch them respond in that fourth questions and those turnarounds. It's there. Yeah. And so we become very aware of the signals that our child is putting out to us, and it wakes us up to ourselves. So he doesn't listen to me. Another turnaround. I don't listen to me. I'm not listening to me. To hurt my child is it's just like to stab a knife in my own heart. Even though our anger tries to override it, we feel it. And no anger can override that kind of hurt and guilt. And it also trains us to stay in that behavior. And inquiry begins to reverse that behavior because we're working with this, and then our behavior changes. And then our children's behavior changes and the way we communicate. So I like to say, Nicole, that if there's a problem in my house, I look to me. And that is so empowering because no one has to change around me. Other than me, I was the last to know.
There are times, Katie, when I can feel my ego pushing against that.
Yes.
It happens very, very rarely with my kids, but more so with my partner.
Yes.
Where I know if I take the time to turn this around, it's going to come face back on me. Instance of it. What do we do in that situation when the fear of actually taking responsibility for our own feelings?
Well, for me, I just notice, and I notice that I'm not up for the work. I'm not up for inquiry. I'm not into anything, being right here. And that's just where I'm at. And then later, when I'm a little more sane, I'll sit down and do that judge and neighbor worksheet on that situation where he was so terrible. So unfair. So insensitive.
Yes, okay. I'm going to put that one down.
Because we've got to win a few, but we eventually come to understand that every time we win, we lose. We've lost ourselves. But it comes in time. The work is not something we have to do. The work is just there when we're tired of the suffering. And it's a practice. It's a practice of just mindfully sitting in a situation and questioning the thoughts that cause the suffering in that situation. And we're not always willing, but I like to take, 20, 30 minutes out of the day and have a good day. That's what husbands and children are for. They push us to get free or just run.
I think that's a good point that you've made, because that's the biggest life lesson I've taken away from your work. That the whole purpose and the reason for these very close connected relationships is to teach me more about myself. They stand up and they show me where I need to grow.
Yes.
And when I own that, it does become less about who's driving me mad.
Yes.
And who makes
It just becomes so fascinating to see how we ourselves see the world and our family members and how crazy we can be. And the guilt begins to leave when we even see ourselves, I was crazy in that moment. And we begin to experience a lightheartedness about it, because it's such a relief to know it's not our child or our husband that is the cause of our suffering, but what we were thinking and believing, what we were attached to believing. And so the world gets lighter, and our children notice, and our partners notice, and our teachers, the children's teachers notice, and it's, the world notices. A kinder human being is a kinder human being. And for example, when I'm kinder, when I'm clear, I'm kinder. And when I'm kinder, everyone we experience, whether it's here or there, we see in a clearer way, which is a kinder way.
You also have a great book called Tiger Ties It True for Kids.
Yes.
Which I loved, because what it did was allow me to introduce the whole questioning thoughts to my kids at a really young age. And the story was so beautiful that they resonated with it instantly.
I'm so happy to hear that.
As parents, what can we do to continue to teach our kids to keep practicing the method of the work, to question their thoughts and to turn them around so they can find the peace within the work themselves?
Well, for example, if my child said, Mom, you don't listen to me, I might say, you could be right. I'm not really in touch. If it's true for me, you could be right. And I'm not in touch with right now, but, I'm going to question it, because I don't want anything to separate us. And I know you don't want that either.
That is a completely different approach to the one I first took. And I'll tell you what I did, because you can have a laugh. My first response was, is that true?
Oh, they don't want to hear that. Oh my gosh, if you want to alienate people in your life, just go, is it true? Or turn it around.
Is it absolutely true?
So if I think someone should turn it around, boy, I need to turn it around. If I think someone should question their thoughts, I need to question mine. So I learned the hard way, like you did, though.
We talked earlier about the two sorts of parenting paradigms that a lot of us are floating in the middle of. And for me, the issue is that my subconscious, while I'm still working on it, is still steeped in those limiting beliefs of the old parenting paradigm. Yes. And sometimes I can find myself swinging like this and getting heavy with the guilt that, I've flipped again. I've yelled again.
Yeah.
That's not the way I was supposed to.
Well, on that Judge Your Neighbor worksheet, remember, I'm willing to backslide. I look forward to backsliding. So we just see that there's a little more work to do. It's okay. And life is just, and our children, it's just another reminder there's a little work to do.
One of the things that I was mindful of, Katie, was that I didn't want to express my need for approval or for understanding. I am a good mom. I don't want to put that on my kids.
Yeah.
How do I use the work to ensure that I can make peace with my slips and my mistakes while I'm learning, and don't put my need for approval onto my kids?
So let's say on the Judge Your Neighbor worksheet, on that last statement, number 6, I wrote, I don't ever want to seek my children's approval again. Okay? So the turnaround for that is I'm willing to seek their approval again. I look forward to seeking their approval again, because it's going to push me right back into the work, because it's going to hurt. Because no child wants a needy parent.
It's true.
But, and then at the time when we find ourselves doing it again, we can just say, sweetheart, I'm not the parent I want to be all the time. But, when sometimes I just want your approval. I try so hard, and I'm doing my best, and that may be putting a lot on you, but sometimes I just need you to say, I appreciate you, Mom. And then they will or they won't. But then we find out when they say, I appreciate you, Mom, our minds go, no, you don't. If you did, you'd make up your bed.
That's right.
So that Judge Your Neighbor worksheet, it's so powerful on that last one. I'm willing to make a mistake. I look forward to make a mistake. I'm willing to suffer. I look forward to suffering. I don't ever want to do it wrong. I'm willing to do it wrong. I look forward to doing it wrong, because life pushes us to enlightenment, self-realization, and freedom, and that equates to better parenting.
I've got one more question from one of our members. This one comes from Jessica. And Jessica says, my 12-year-old daughter has become very closed. She will not open up and tell me about her day at school or her interaction with her friends. I feel like I'm locked out of her life. How can I find my way back in?
This just comes to my mind. For me, I do the work and allow them their space. And then I appreciate that they're giving me the space. Like if they freeze me out, now I'm mature enough through the work to understand that it's giving me peace. I mean, it's that place where they don't want me, they don't need me, they don't, it's like they're processing, they're doing their own thing, and the house is quiet, and they're in their room with the door closed, and things are fine in my life. But the difference in gratitude and appreciation for life, the way that it is, or worry, and standing outside the door saying, open the door, or whether it's emotionally or a physical door. But this, oh my gosh, there was something I wanted to share with you, but it left my mind as it would. But where were you in that last thing? Do you recall?
So this one was a 12-year-old daughter who has become very closed. She will not open up and tell me about her day or her interaction with her friends.
Okay.
I feel like I'm left out.
It came to me, a couple of friends of mine that have two of just darling little boys. They're amazing little boys and parents. They're so in the work, the parents. But they taught me this on my last visit with them, that every day they say, at the end of the day, they say, what was the rose and what was the thorn? Do you know that one?
No.
Well, then the little boys, they get so excited to give the rose, the best thing that happened to them that day. And maybe there's two, but it's night, so it's kind of limited. And then what was the thorn? And then they get to say the sad thing that happened or what. And it's not always impressive, but I'm doing that with my grandchildren that are staying with me. What is the rose? And boom, they've got it. And I know how, like I have one of them in 2 courses and both of them in 1 course through this summer period they're staying with me. And I know immediately how their course is going, what they're learning about the teacher, about their attitude to everything, my grandchild's attitude toward it. What was the thorn? And it's amazing how they're tapped into their courses where I think, well, I was hungry was the thorn, but it has developed into something much more, because and it's kind of like a doorway into their life. And I find it that I'm asking it a couple of times a day, like every time I pick them up for school or class, and then at the end of the evening or at the dinner table. And it's such a window in. And sometimes it gives children the opportunity of, a way of opening up that they didn't have before, where they can say anything without being punished or looked down on. And then I share mine too. And I think that's a very important thing, that we're all equal in it, that they see that I'm human, that parents and grandparents have roses and thorns as well.
That's a really good one. What we do at our dinner table, we talk about our funny moments for the day. And they'll go back or exciting moments.
Yes.
But I haven't incorporated the thorns, and I think that's a really good opening to help us find out where they need some extra support.
Yes, it's so powerful. So powerful. Yeah, the rose and the thorn, or the funny thing that happened. You know, as I consider that, the rose holds less definition, less parameters. Yeah.
Could be anything.
Yeah, could be anything. Yeah. Good stuff.
My final question for you, Katie. On my journey from that old parenting paradigm to the new one, I've come full circle, and I've realized that I started this journey trying to figure out the right tools and techniques to parent and to guide my kids. And what I found was that I will be the best parent when I learn how to truly love myself.
Yes.
And I wanted to talk about that because I think as parents, we don't have that connection. And a lot of us, because we've been raised in that control, fear-based parenting paradigm, while we do have a level of self-love, it doesn't get to the level of unconditional love for ourselves.
Yes.
How can we use the work to identify the areas that we need to grow? Because this was the hardest thing for me. Because if you asked me if I loved myself, I would say, of course I love myself. And it was difficult to figure out the specific areas, and it's a painful journey of where I needed to grow and where I needed to give myself more love.
Yes. So for me, it's every time I'm disrespecting, in this case, when we look at the family, every time I'm disrespecting a family member, my mind is off. So I cannot love myself under those conditions. I always love myself, but that we'll say disrespect, just to use a term there, overrides that respect. And it shows me what is in the way of self-respect, self-love. So when I do a worksheet on a situation with my child, let's say the homework, and I work through that worksheet and I turn it around and I begin to live what I find in the wants, needs, and shoulds. It just becomes natural. But when I do the work, then I love myself every time. That enlightenment shows up when I'm communicating with a family member. Every time. And I love myself. I don't even have to think it. I'm just oozing. And it's reciprocated. It's just, and we, even if my child were to say, Mom, I don't like you, my mind goes, well, how could he like me? If I believed what he was thinking and believing, I wouldn't like me either. How could he? But so I don't take on what he was believing as though it were mine. That's his. And if he were of right mind, if the world were of right mind, no one would be disconnected. But it's easier than that. If you are connected, the whole world's connected, because you wouldn't be able to perceive anything else. And that's when you've got it, because that's what's really going on. So self-love, for me, for example, I want him to listen to me. When we look at the turnarounds after inquiry, I want me to listen to me in that situation. Isn't that what you really wanted? We weren't hearing ourselves. We were on automatic. Yeah. I want me to. So the next time I'm with my child, I'm listening more closely to me. I find myself listening more closely. And so it shuts down that rhetoric, that harsh rhetoric. And it doesn't just go, just shut down. It says, oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry for what I just said. Let's start over. It just becomes a gentle, gentle process. I want him to listen to me. Another turnaround. I don't want him to listen to me. I'm learning his internal and what he's thinking and believing, where he's troubled and where he's bothered. And I learned so much from listening to my child. It's like the thorn, the rose and thorn, like that thorn coming at me, So I'm connected. It's not all about me, me, me. I'm connected to my child's position. So in those moments, I love myself. So that is the practice of self-love. Again, it is living those turnarounds so inquiry and turnarounds, and then just experiencing the difference in the way you see that child the next time they walk through the door, and everyone else. And when you look in the mirror, there's nothing you can do not to love what you see.
Katie, thank you so much for joining
You're
us.
so welcome. What a joy you are. And again, thank you for your beautiful work in this world. I'm so grateful.
Did you find this video valuable? If you did, be sure to leave us a thumbs up so that we're aware. Also, don't forget to leave a comment so that we understand your feedback, ask questions that we can pose to our experts, so that we can really ensure that this conversation keeps going and it's a rich and rewarding one for you. This is also a weekly show, so be sure to subscribe, and remember, it still takes a village, so be sure to share this content with your friends and family today.